For the sea is song for the Staffordshire man in 14 County mine. A fire shall burn and a mill wheels turn and a knot shall be our sign. Hey!
Good morning and welcome back to My Global Kitchen. So today we've not one but two recipes for you. For the first, we're heading just a fairly short distance south from our last destination, which, as you may recall, was Liverpool, through Cheshire to Staffordshire, to make a very traditional dish, which has been a staple food in and around Stoke and the potteries at least since the 17th century, and probably reached its peak popularity during the Industrial Revolution, when it was very much a prototype fast food for the workers. So what will we need? Well, we're going to need some oats, some wholemeal flour, some plain flour, some yeast, a little bit of salt, some milk, some water, and a little bit of oil for frying. So what are we making? We're making Staffordshire oatcakes. Now, as I said, we have here oats. Now, what we need for this recipe is ground oats or oatmeal, but you can't get that here. So I've just got sort of fairly normal porridge oats, and I'm just going to put them in the food processor for a minute, just to grind them down further. So, you know, I've put a food processor on the list of equipment for today, but if you can get ground oats, then you don't need the food processor. So let's look at the full equipment list. So for this dish we will need, or you may need, a food processor. You definitely will need a mixing bowl, a whisk, a jug and a frying pan. So here we have our mix of ground oats, wholemeal flour and some plain flour. To that I'm going to add some dried yeast and a teaspoon of salt. Okay, and then here I have a mix of 50-50 of milk and water, and I've just warmed that up a little bit, so it's about 40 degrees, see, warm to the touch. And I'm going to add that into our flour mixture, stir it around. Give that a good mix up. Like that. Make sure everything's reasonably well incorporated. Yeah, it's looking good. So it's a bit like a thickish batter mixture, but because it's got yeast in it, what we're going to do now is just cover that and put it somewhere reasonably warm for an hour, maybe 2 hours, until there's a little bit of froth and foam on the top, which means that the yeast is activating. And once that's reached that stage, then we can cook them. And they cook very similar way to traditional English or British pancakes. You just put a little oil in a frying pan, pour a little of the mix round, and make it as if it were a pancake, but it's an oat cake. And there we have it. And the only thing left to decide after that will be what we're going to stuff it with. And the ingredients for the oat cakes are 125 grams of oatmeal, 75 grams of wholemeal flour, 50 grams of white flour, a teaspoon of instant yeast, a teaspoon of salt, 250 millilitres of milk, 250 millilitres of water, and a little bit of oil for frying. Okay, so here we have our oatcakes which have been cooked off. The question now is, what are we going to put in them? So today, as it's Sunday morning, I'm going to make breakfast oatcakes. So the first thing I do is sprinkle a bit of grated cheese over the cake. Then I've got a mix of sausage and bacon and onion. Generous filling, as much as you can reasonably get in. And then just a little splurge of ketchup. Fold it over like that. Just put them to one side, and we'll just, when we've got them all ready, we'll just put them in the pan and reheat them slightly so the cheese melts and everything's nice and warm. So there we have it, Staffordshire oatcakes. Okay, so as I said, we have two recipes today, and you might have noticed the change of flag, because we've moved from my mother's home county of Staffordshire to my home county of Kent, the Garden of England. And this is something of a mysterious dish in a way, pretty common in Kent, at least when I was growing up, but almost unknown anywhere else as far as I know. But for me, growing up in Kent and having regular school dinners, this was a regular feature on the menu. And so simple, because all we really need is some pastry, short crust pastry, some evaporated milk, some dark sugar, and then just a little bit of flour to roll the pastry out. And that's all we need. And what we're going to make with those ingredients is what we used to call gypsy tart. So for this we'll need a chopping board, a rolling pin, a mixing bowl, a whisk, a flan dish and a knife. And our ingredients, very simply, 300 grams of short crust pastry, 400 millilitres of evaporated milk, 340 grams of dark brown sugar, ideally muscovado, and 50 grams of flour. So we've lined our flan dish, or our dish, with the pastry, and now all we're going to do, we've been whisking this mix for about 15 minutes to make it light and airy. And the one thing I should have said is that the evaporated milk should be straight from the fridge, so it should be very cold. Okay, so we pour that into here like that. Yeah, perfect amount. And then that's just going to go into the oven for around 20 minutes, 25 minutes, until it's fairly set but still just slightly wobbly. And there we have it, gypsy tart.
When you go down up in down in Kent, you wish you'll never